Hey, Dongting, can you hear me okay? Morning, Joseph. Okay, we should start. Can folks hear me at home? Good, cool. So we're obviously missing some people. It's, I think for some people, been a long, strange night, and probably it will be a long, strange day or two, or week, or something. It's unclear kind of what the end game looks like here, but certainly there is a lot of unanswered questions, and I know that some people are pretty stressed out as a consequence. So we'll, do what we can. If you've got concerns, let me know, and we'll try to make arrangements. And we'll certainly get this. I'll try to make sure this video is up by midday today. For people who don't manage to come in the morning, so they can watch it later. So, are there questions that people want to ask, or things people want to talk about before I talk about the fun and excitement of fixing the file image problem that we had on Monday? Questions, comments on that? Okay, then anything at home? Then let's go ahead and just fix the mistake. And talk about what blew up and why. And yeah, I don't think, in retrospect, I don't think this will affect things very much, but it did raise sort of an issue that's worth thinking about, and it points out some of the complications that happen in the history of computer science. So yay team. And we'll also talk about how to do image. There's a second way we can deal with images, using them as URLs, and we'll talk about that. And then I think we'll be done with this. Okay. Are there any other questions about the Madlib assignment other than the image thing? Anybody got anything that isn't an image related piece of that? Okay, I'm gonna call it good. So the super short version, and I don't want to dwell on this endlessly, but the super short version of the problem, I'm going to share Jess. Was out of the way, that over here. If we look down here at the bottom, this is an example of a file path on a Windows machine. Now, I have a Mac at home, and I did all this prep on a Mac. And some things that I did on a Mac worked fine, and then didn't work when I got here Monday. And I was like, I don't understand why. And in doing some homework when I got home, I figured out what the issue was. And it's somewhat subtle. For historical reasons, Windows computers have a drive specification at the front of a path. So if you have multiple hard drives on your computer, they will have different letters. And if you have a laptop and say you put in a USB stick, that'll mount with a different letter. C, for historical reasons, is the standard drive on a Windows machine, but other letters are entirely possible. And if you have a home computer and you've plugged a bunch of hard drives into it, maybe you take a lot of photographs, or you do video work or something and you need a lot of storage. Each of those drives will have a different letter. Unix computers and Mac computers are essentially built on top of Unix, don't use this drive distinction. They handle multiple drives in a different way. We don't need to worry about the details. What turned out to be a problem, which I had not anticipated, is that if you put something like this into a web browser, some bad things happen. In particular, if let's say I share, oh, come on. Let's say I share instead my web browser. Come on. Oh yeah, stop sharing that. That's the problem. Share the web browser. So if we look at the URL at the top, it says HTTPS : and then some other stuff. So it turns out that the internet has a variety of protocols. These are kind of different ways of communicating about different sorts of information. And URLs are preceded by the protocol that says, this is the thing I want to use. This is the kind of conversation I want to have. And you haven't probably ever had to think about this, because almost everything you do is HTTP, or in these days, probably more likely HTTPS, actually. But those are actually two different protocols. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You might remember that HTML stood for Hypertext Markup Language. So HTTP is a protocol for moving web pages around on the internet. So it's a hypertext transfer protocol. So it says, here's how we're going to transfer hypertext documents, HTML documents, around on the web. HTTPS, the S stands for secure. So the S means that when we move the data around, it's being encrypted so that other people can't read it. Before we had HTTPS, and we didn't have HTTPS for the first, 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure when HTTPS became widely used, but for the first 5 to 10 years of the web, we didn't have that. And one of the things that that meant is commerce on the web wasn't very safe. So if you entered your credit card information on a web page, it traveled across the internet unencrypted. And so anyone who was able to listen in on that conversation, which before wireless would have been fairly difficult, but once wireless came into the world, started to become a lot easier, because you might be doing this in a coffee shop or in a library or some other public space, and then anybody can listen to the radio waves that are going around in that space. That's actually not very hard to do. They would then see your credit card information, and they could then just use that and pretend to be you and start spending your money. And that would make you sad for obvious reasons. HTTPS deals with that. So it encrypts the information so that other people who see it just see gibberish and can't extract from that your sensitive data. So that's why you should always use HTTPS if you're doing anything that is secure, anything that involves passwords, credit card numbers, social security numbers, anything that you would really not want other people to have. And most browsers these days give you some kind of visual clue that you're looking at a secure web page, like the lock here that Firefox is providing. I think all the major browsers have some kind of icon that indicates that, oh yes, you're on a secure web page, and this would be an okay place to enter secure information. So those are two protocols, HTTP and HTTPS. There are others. There's a mail to protocol for emails. There's an SSH protocol. I mean, you don't care, right? This is not stuff you care about. What matters today is that the web browser was treating the C: as a protocol. when it saw something like C colon users McPhee blah 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 blah, it took that C colon at the beginning as a protocol. It saw C as a protocol, not as a drive. And that's why we were getting blanks in our web pages, is that that C colon was being misinterpreted by the web browser as a protocol, not as a file indicator. And there are ways to fix this. And actually the browser, that's interesting. I hadn't expected this. The browser is giving us a hint as to how we might deal with this. It is suggesting using the protocol file colon. So there's a protocol file, F-I-L-E, which says, I want this to be interpreted as a file descriptor on this computer and not as an HTTP or a something else. And so if we in fact put file colon, and actually it'd be three, turns out you need 3 slashes. The reasons for that are a little complicated and I'm not going to get into it. Then this would actually work. We would load up an image here and it would succeed. But I wasn't doing that. And on a Mac, like I said, if I just did /users McPhee stuff, on a Mac, this sort of worked because it didn't see something as a protocol at the beginning. So it said, oh, this is odd. I'm going to guess it's a file, and loaded it as a file. But on a Windows box, because it saw the C colon, it went, I'll use the magical C protocol, which doesn't exist. I don't know what to do with that. You get a blank spot. And so that's why that didn't work on Monday, which is probably more information than you care about. So what do we do about it? We'll talk about that. I'm going to go back to sharing. Well, actually, before I go back to sharing Jess and we fix some things, does anybody have any questions about this? Like, this is not going to be on the exam or something. There's not going to be some trick question about protocols or anything weird like that. I just wanted you to have some understanding of why it didn't work in class Monday, which is probably just me trying to cover my butt. But if you've got questions, I'd be happy to take them. Okay, stop share. Share Jess. Share Jess. Okay. So if we, well, let's first actually look at right page to file. So this didn't exist on Monday. It was what we were headed for. And then I had the problem with the images, and so we didn't get there. But this is pretty critical for you to be able to finish the assignment. So I want to make sure that we have seen this. So I've written a function, right page to file. Function's up here. Here's how it's called. It takes the contents of the file, and that's what's constructed with make page, and the name of the file. What are we going to call our HTML file? And the write-up for the assignment says you should call it your last name.html. So for my example, I'm calling it McPhee.html. You clearly don't want to call it McPhee.html. You want to call it, you know, Otremba.html or whatever your last name is. Or I'll end up with a whole pile of McPhee.htmls, and that'll be confusing. So this takes the contents, which is just a string, and the name. So what does it do? Well, the first thing we have to do is be clear about where we're going to write the file. If you don't make it clear where you're writing the file, one of two things can happen. Either A, it will try to write it someplace that it doesn't have permission to, and you'll get an error. and it'll be probably a pretty inscrutable error. So that's not very helpful. The other option is it writes it, but you don't know where it put it. Like maybe it put it at the top of your file system, or maybe it put it in your downloads directory, or maybe it put it in your home directory, or maybe it put it on the moon. You don't know. And so that's a problem because then you got to go find it. And it's also a problem for the grader because the grader doesn't want to have to go hunting all over their computer for, crude.html. That would be awkward and not fun. So I would encourage people to allow the user to say where they want it to go and then put it there. So if we prompt them and say, choose a directory where the HTML file will go, and then we call pick a folder, and I don't know if we've ever actually talked about pick a folder. It's mentioned in the book, but it's a friend of pick a file. So where pick a file forces you to pick a file and gives you the path to that file, pick a folder picks a folder and gives you a path to that folder. Then, once you have that folder, then I called it, well, maybe I should call it folder. That would be a better name. Folder, and then I'll change this to folder. So once you have the folder path and the file name, if you append those together, you should get the full path to where you actually want this thing to go. So if the folder is users McPhee CSci 1201, and the file name is then folder plus file name might be users McPhee CSci 1201 McPhee.html. So it'll join those two strings together and give us a full path to where we want to write the contents of the file. Okay? Does that make sense for folks? Questions? Now, once we know where we want to write the file, we have to open it. So this is a little dance, this open, write, close. This is a little dance that you do in almost all programming languages, in almost all programming systems, if you want to write data to a file. You need to first open the file, which allows the system to interact with it. Okay? It's like building a connection with the file that you can then use. You then write to the file, and then when you're done, you close the file. You seal it back up again. And that close is important because the system might choose not to write everything to the drive immediately for efficiency reasons. And if your program ends and you haven't closed the file, the last bits might not have been written to the file yet. And so closing is an important way of ensuring that everything's been tidied up and that you're done. So let me actually change this to full file name is folder plus file name. That'll be maybe a little clearer. And then we'll say full file name here. So open takes two arguments. The first is the name of the file you want to connect with. And the second is, in Python, a string. And this is handled a little differently from one language to another, but this is not unusual, is a string that indicates how we want to interact with the file. And there are basically two major kinds of interaction. You either want to read a file or you want to write a file. That's typically, you rarely want to do both, actually. It turns out that that doesn't come up very often. So you're usually either reading the contents of a file and doing something with it or writing the contents of a file. and that's it. And so W here stands for write. And that says that we're going to write to this file. We want to open it for writing, okay? And the system needs to know what you're doing. It turns out like multiple people can read from a file at the same time. That isn't a problem. But having multiple people write to a file at the same time is chaos, okay? So a bunch of people can read this screen at the same time. But if you were all writing to the screen at the same time, it could be really crazy and hard to know how to deal with conflicts. So if you're reading, it will actually let multiple people read. If you're writing, usually only one program can write to a file at a time. And then the T here says that we're going to write text to the file as opposed to binary data like an image or a sound file. It turns out, and this is a historical thing more than a useful piece of information, that files like images and sound are treated slightly differently than text files. In particular, every character historically in a piece of text uses 7 of the 8 bits in every byte. And a picture or a sound file uses all 8 bits. And so if you're writing text, the system can do some things about the fact that the 8th bit is never used. And if it thinks it's writing text and you try writing a picture or a sound or some other data that's using all 8 bits, you might lose every 8th bit, and then that'll really mangle your stuff. It's bad. We don't care. We will only be writing text this way. So WT if you're writing text, that's all you need to think about, okay? So this says we want to be able to write text to this file. And if the file doesn't exist, it will create it and make it empty to begin with. If the file's already there, it will actually delete its contents and make it empty for us to write into. So we will overwrite anything that's already there. It will not save it. Now, if you don't have permission to write to that file because it belongs to someone else or it's a system file, then you can get an error here. If you're saying, I want to write to this file, and the system's like, you don't got permission to write to this file, then that's actually going to generate an error. It'll say it can't open it. But if it can, it'll open it and be ready to write to it, okay? Questions? Then we can call file.write, and we can call this multiple times. We can call file.write over and over and over again. So instead of joining all the parts of the web page up into a single big string and writing those out, you could actually write each part to the file with a separate file.write. So you could write the doc string with one file.write, the header with another file.write, the body with another file.write, right? So you could do that if you wanted to. For various reasons, I think it's simpler if you build the whole web page and then write it all in one go, but there's nothing magic about that. You could do it the other way. And then you close the file when you're done, okay? And so if we do this, so if we say, please pick a picture, and we pick a file, I guess I don't need this print image file anymore. And then and actually I'm gonna switch to the other version of this. Just a second. I want to look at something here quick. I'm going to switch to the other version. So we've been just putting files in. What might be a simpler approach, and you can do it either way, and you can even mix these. It's up to you. but it might be simpler because it avoids all this operating system specific business about how files are stored. We can say, please enter a URL for a picture. And, and actually we want that to be a request string. Sorry, so we're going to want to say request string, and here we would say image URL, and then we don't need this anymore. And actually, I'll go ahead and leave the print image URL here so we can see what that looked like. We can actually provide just the URL for a picture, and it will find that. If we say source equals and we provide a URL, it will just load that picture up. And that actually is, in some ways, the simplest approach here, because it doesn't, it takes us outside the operating system question. And so what you're doing, if you're using one operating system and the TA is using another operating system, that won't matter. Whereas if we do the file thing, it might create some issues where, like we saw on Monday, something worked for me at home, did not work here in the classroom. So I'm going to actually do this example using a URL. So we're going to get an image URL, and then I'm going to change this to be image URL. And then make page, let's chase this down and see what other changes might need to be made. Make page, we'll change this to a picture URL. Copy, boom. And then make image, we'll change this to a picture URL. So this example is now wrong. So we really want something like, well, here, let me go find a picture. Images.google.com. Now you can, let's say we want a picture of a cat, because cats are cute. Now, one thing, if you're serious about this, you want to be careful about property rights. So there are a lot of images on the internet, but not a lot of them are copyrighted, and you're not allowed to use them without permission of the person who created the image. And so if you want to be careful about that, a lot of search tools, Google being one of them, allows you to specify what sort of rights you're looking for on an image. So if you click on this tools thing and you do the usage rights, you can say all, that's the default, or you can say Creative Commons licenses or commercial and other licenses. If you want to know, oh, I'm not sharing the right thing. Oh my goodness grief, thank you. Okay, let's undo this and come back to it so that thank you, Zeke. Darg. I'd like be sitting at sort of a 90-degree angle, so at least this is sort of visible in my peripheral vision. Okay, now we're looking at Google. So if we're looking at Google, so this is, I went to images.google.com. So if we look at the web bar here, images.google.com gives you specifically an image search tool. And you can search for things like cat. And lo and behold, you get cats, okay? Now there's lots of pictures of cats, but you may not have permission to, and we can like look for white cats and fluffy cats and drawings of cats and baby cats and kittens. What the difference is between a baby cat and a kitten, I don't really know, but I'm not gonna worry about it. And anime cats, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. If we wanna make sure that we have permission to use this cat picture, if we click on this tools button, one of the options here is usage rights. We click on that, we've got some options. Your safest bet is probably Creative Commons license. A Creative Commons license ensures that you have the right to use the picture as long as you give people credit. So we can say Creative Commons license, and we could go with, oh, this cat yawning in the park. That seems like a nice picture. So we'll pick on that, and if we right click on the picture, we get open. Don't we get open? Is that gonna work? Oh, there we are. Yep, open link in new. So we get the picture. Now I want the URL. Oh, and here Wikimedia gives us different sizes, but I was hoping view image. I think that's, oh, copy image location. That's even better. Copy image location is going to give us the URL for the picture. And so if I make a new tab and I paste that in, that's the full path to the picture on the web. So that would be what we would put in our web page. So if we come back to Jess, and we run, oh yeah, so let's put an example in. That's a pretty ugly, example, but it is an honest example. Okay. So now if we run this, load program, we say make my page. It says, please enter a URL for a picture. So if I paste in that great big cat yawning in park thing and say, okay. And it says, choose a directory where the HTML will go. So I'll say, okay. And then I'll just put it in my CSci 1201 directory. Oop. And it should have printed, yeah, so here's the URL that it printed for the cat yawning in the park, okay? And it also printed the whole contents of our web page, in case we care. And notice we've got the src equals cat yawning in park business. Now we ought to be able to look at our web page, hopefully. So let's go find out. Open, and I need to go up one, I think, because I'm in media sources. And so here I am, and there's McPhee. Hey! Ah, I did it again. I did all of that, and you couldn't see any of it. Okay, try one more time. I clearly should just share the whole screen. That would simplify everybody's life. Let's do that. Share the whole screen. Okay. Now I'm going to make a new tab. I'm going to say open, Control O. I'm in CSci 1201, which is where I told it to put the web page. If I scroll down, there is a McPhee.html. It's not showing us the .html. Windows doesn't show you extensions by default. In this case, the fact that it's an Explorer or Edge icon is its way of saying that this is an HTML document. And if we hover over it, it says type HTML document. It's getting that from the extension. So the extension's there, it's just hiding it from us. In the same way that like Dogstool's got a .jpeg, but it's not showing us that. So if we double click here, yay, we loaded the web page, and there's the cute cat yawning in the park. Okay. And there's our web page. Huzzah. We did a thing. Okay. Whew, that was a lot. But it worked, finally. Questions? Stunned silence. Scroll down here, yeah. So the new stuff was mostly writing the page to the file. So choosing where do we want the directory to go, picking a folder, assembling the full path to the file name, opening the file, writing the contents, and closing the file. And you can basically copy this more or less as is. This ought to work fine for your project without you needing to make any changes to that. And so that plus what we've done with make page should give you really everything you need for the assignment. And then it's really just a matter of inserting the contents. Just a matter of inserting the contents. Okay. Questions? Anything? You all good? Good or stunned, don't know which. Okay, so we've got like 25 minutes. So why don't we actually think about how we might turn this into a Madlib. Okay, I think we've got the pieces. Let's actually make a small Madlib that's got some pictures and some words in it, okay? So I'm gonna think first about, I wanna think about my story a little bit. Before we actually try to like write code, because I think you should like probably sketch out your story either on paper, or if you got a whiteboard, or you know, on the computer, however you find that useful. But it's probably useful to kind of think about, well, what's the story going to look like? So so we might do something, I mean, now that we've got a picture of a cat. So our pet cat, insert picture of cat. What would a cat do? I need something for this cat to do here in this sentence. Or I could say likes to, and then insert verb. We'll make it the job of the user to figure out what the cat does. They like to repeat the verb. With insert picture of animal. And when they are done, they typically eat, insert picture of food. So we can have a simple story like that. So we're going to insert a picture of a cat. The user is going to provide a verb. The user is going to provide a picture of some other animal and a picture of a piece of food, kind of food. And that'll give us a little story with some pictures in it, okay? Does that seem reasonable? Okay. So we could, Matt, what's the assignment say? The assignment says to call the make Madlib. Yep. So we could say, oh, Jess, come back, Jess. def make Madlib. And make Madlib's going to take some arguments, which are going to come from my story notes. So we're going to have cat picture, verb, animal picture, and food picture. Okay. And so we want to make a page that uses these things. Okay. So we're going to have page equals make page, and it's going to have a title, which is going to be, let's see, our Madlib, because we'll do this together. And so that's the title. Then the header will be our wondrous Madlib. And then now we have to have our contents. We're gonna have to like sort out our contents here. And so maybe I'll write a function to make contents that takes the cat picture and the verb and the animal picture and the food picture, and it'll create the body of the web page. And since that got really long, I'm going to take this out and contents, fill, you know. Okay. And notice, I think that there's a larger point to be made here. Notice I started with make contents here, and I had the whole thing, and the line was really long, and that annoyed me, right? So I was like, oh, I don't like that. I'm going to move that up and give it a name, and then I'll just use the name here. This is not something I thought about in advance. Like I hadn't sort of planned this out and gone, oh, I should make I know this is going to be long, so I'm going to make a contents thing, right? I discovered this by letting the code talk to me, right? If you listen to what the code is telling you, the code often is very informative if you pay attention. In the same way that if you're writing a paper, the paper can often tell you a lot about what it needs. If you are writing a section and you realize you're using a bunch of terminology that your reader doesn't know, that's telling you you need to say something about that maybe earlier. Maybe you needed a background section where you defined a bunch of terms. Or maybe you just need to say something in the preceding paragraph, okay? But you want the paper to be able to say things to you about what it needs. And if you do that, that actually can make your job a lot harder. It's really difficult if you feel like you have to know everything before you start. It can be very paralyzing because you don't know everything before you start. There's all kinds of uncertainty. There are a handful of people in the world that can envision complex things entirely in their head and have them completely and accurately mapped out. But that is a tiny number of people in my experience. Most of us other human beings, like we have a rough idea at best, and then you kind of stumble through it and find your way. And part of that is listening to what the code tells you. And I know that sounds like a strange idea, but based on having done this for a long time, I think it's actually a really valuable thing. The code will often tell you what it needs. And if you listen to it, that can be helpful. And so here the code told me it needed this thing. I'm like, okay, I'll make that thing. Notice this doesn't exist yet, right? I'll fix that later, right? But I know roughly what it will need to do, and I can tidy that bit up in a second. And so then I make the page, then I write page to file, page McPhee. I'll call it McPhee2.html so we know it's actually different. And I don't really need this to return anything. That return up here in make page was so I could look at it before. I could, but I don't have to like look at it. I can just open it up. So I'll just do it this way for now. Oops, I got a capital I here I don't need. Okay, questions about Make Madlib for a simple story? Def make contents. That's going to take a cat picture and a verb and an animal picture and a food picture. And we will need to, so if we look at, where is it? Make page here. This is sort of the example to think about. Oh no, actually, yeah. So we've got a make body. That's really the main thing we need is the make body part. So we need to hand it. So it'll be like make page, but we'll want to hand it a body instead. So I'm going to steal this, and go down here and make contents. It's going to look like that. So except, okay, we're using make page. So make page, let me undo that. Make page assumed that we handed a paragraph and a picture URL, and that's not going to work anymore. So I think we're going to call this like make Madlib page, maybe. Oh no, we could just, yeah, because we are going to have to hand this the title and everything. So we could call this make Madlib page, keep it distinct from the other example. So content still is going to need to be filled in. We'll deal with that in a second. But this is going to need to be make Madlib page because it's going to take a different set of arguments than our old make page did. So it's going to just take, make Madlib page is going to take the title, oops, that's here, title, heading, and contents. Can't spell. So we'll make the head, we'll have the title. We don't need this part. The body is just the contents. And so the result will be the doc type, the HTML, the head plus, actually maybe if we just call this body, that would be better. Yeah, there we go. So now we're going to have this title. So this actually needs to be part of the contents, doesn't it? Because this goes in the header. So I want this to be over here. And maybe body is a better name here, actually, now that I think about it. So we're going to make contents is going to take our title, well, our header, not our title. Our title's down here. And it'll take the pieces and it's going to make the web page for us. And in fact, I guess we could, yeah, we'll leave it that way. And then we write it to the file. And make Madlib page is going to take the heading, oh, it does need this, doesn't it? Yes, it does. So that's the title, yep, right? And then it doesn't need the heading, it just needs the body. It takes the title and the body, makes head with the title, makes the body, and then puts the doc type in front of it. So hopefully that'll make a Madlib page for us. But now we have to like do make contents. And actually we could call that make body, I think would be a better name now. Body, we want our header to be in there as well. So we take a header, cat picture, a verb, an animal picture, and a food picture. Header, cat picture, verb, animal picture, food picture. Now we want to steal what we did. Basically this part right here is going to be the model that we want that makes the body. Oh, and it's called make body up there. So, oh, so this is gonna, I lost a paren. So again, let's give this a make Madlib body so that we can tell the difference between the two. You know, so we'll have the heading. I called it header. Maybe heading's a better word. Heading. So the heading, we'll do that, wrapping that in an H1. And now we need to have our actual cat business with our pictures. So we're going to wrap all that in a paragraph. So we need to construct the paragraph. So the paragraph is going to be our cat, insert picture. Our pet cat, you have to insert a picture of a cat here, likes to, and we'll have to insert a verb. So I'm just sort of grabbing the pieces and we'll have to tidy this up. Paragraph, paragraph, plus, get the next sentence. You know, and paragraph equals paragraph plus, and then the last sentence. Now we'll have to insert all the bits. But we have all the bits because they've all been passed in as arguments, right? So we have the cat picture URL and the verb and the animal picture. So all this stuff exists here. So our pet cat, so we could do that and we could say cat, so really this is the URL. So cat image tag is what I call it, make image. Yep, make, oh, not good, not there, not there, not there. Is make image cat picture, boom. And then we're going to want to insert that paragraph equals paragraph plus cat image tag. So I'm taking our pet cat and then I'm inserting the image tag. Now I can continue the story. It likes to. And I could just insert the verb here. Boom. And let's actually stop there. Let's worry about the rest of this in a little bit because I don't want to run out of time building a complex story. So we're going to take the heading, we're going to wrap it in a H1. We're going to build up a paragraph that has our pet cat plus the cat image tag, which we construct here with make image, likes to, and then the verb. Oops, I need a plus here. And then a period. So that should give us the first sentence of our story. And, you know, if you've got a lot of sentences and they're complicated, you could turn all of this into a function called like make first sentence, if you wanted to. And then you could have make first sentence and make second sentence and make third sentence and then just join them up. That's up to you. Then we wrap that in a P tag here. Then we construct the body by wrapping the body tag around the heading section and the paragraph. In this instance, if we had multiple paragraphs, we might have multiple paragraphs there. And that would return the body. And that then we come back to make Madlib page. No, make Madlib here. And that would work. So now if we can start by just calling that and see what happens. You know, so we could say make, oops, make Madlib. We need a cat picture URL. Oops, we don't have that in the undo. Oh, fine. I'm gonna have to go get that URL again. I don't know why I thought that was still going to be in the paste queue, but whatever. So cat yawning. We'll grab this, and we'll go back here, paste that in. And then it wants a verb. Somebody give me a verb. An action, what? Play? Sure. Play, and then we don't really need the other two yet because we're not using them. So I'm going to just leave them as blank for now. And then, boom, choose a directory where the HTML will go. I will put it there. That's awesome. Now, hopefully, if we open, there should be a McPhee 2. There is. Open. Our pet cat picture likes to play. Okay. So this came from the URL, and this came from Joseph's suggestion of a verb. Okay. And we've got the title, our Madlib, up here in the tab, and the heading, our wondrous Madlib, at the top of the page. Yes? So if you want to include the name, you should use the URL. I think that's the simpler solution, is to use the URLs. We can make the files work, but it just gets complicated because of the different file systems. I think that using the URLs, you know, if you want to use files, let me know. We can make that work. But if you stick to URLs, I think life is simpler. So I would encourage you, and the write-up, to be honest, is not very clear on this. And that's part of how I got burned on Monday. And I'm going to try to make some changes to the write-up to clarify that there are these two options and that there are advantages to just doing the URLs. But if you really want to use files for some reason, by all means, let me know and we can make that work. So, okay. Questions? Other questions? So let's actually, we've got 7 minutes. We can do a little more. So, so we've got paragraph equals paragraph. They like to, now we're going to repeat the verb. That's easy. With, now we need to insert another image. So we need animal image tag, make image animal picture. And so then we would have paragraph equals paragraph plus animal image tag plus period. Boom. So that takes care of that sentence. Let's see if that works. Load. And obviously we would want to change this to involve prompts and stuff instead of me just hacking things in like this, but this lets us test things. So we come back over to Google. What is an animal that people want us to search for a picture of? Somebody give me an animal. Dong Ting, what would be a good animal?
Panda.
A what?
Panda.
A panda. Awesome choice. Lots of cute panda pictures on the internet. So actually, there are adorable panda videos on the internet. So there we go, pandas. And we're doing Creative Commons license. Dongting, which panda picture do you like here?
Maybe just pick the random one. The flicker one?
The which one?
The flicker. The top right.
Oh, this one over here?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we will go with that picture of a panda. And if I copy image location, then I think that will work. And so we'll stick that in here. Yep, that looks like that's a thing. I'm going to hit return. Choose the directory where the HTML will go. Leave it there. And now if I come back up to next page and reload, the little thing there. Oh. Oh, you're right. Good catch. Oh, so much better. Well done, Zeke. So there we have our pet cat likes to play. They like to play with this panda. Okay. And so now we've got the panda in there. Thank you, Dongting, for the panda suggestion. And now we wanted to finish, and notice that the word play here has been inserted here and here. So if Joseph had said likes to swim, right, it would say our pet cat likes to swim. They like to swim with the panda, okay? I know our cat does not like to swim. Most cats do not like to swim. Fishing cats like to swim, but that's an exception rather than a rule. So then the rest would not be very hard. We would just have to add this text and a picture of some food. Well, actually, we've got 2 minutes. Let's do it. Unless somebody's got a question. Somebody has a question. Stop me now before I get too excited. I probably got to put a space after the period. I think I didn't have one there. When they are done, they typically eat food, image tag, make image, food picture, paragraph equals paragraph plus food image tag plus period. And so I think if we do that and we put a picture of food in here, then somebody suggest some kind of food. Zeke, peanut butter. I didn't know that was a thing. So what do we vote for? This one? Okay. Go for it. We'll copy image location, run back to Jess. Yes. And we up arrow and we insert the peanut butter picture and we choose the directory and we say same place. And then we say reload and voila. When they are done, they typically eat peanut butter. And notice the pictures here are pretty huge. I didn't sort of do any resizing that would make these fit better. You could obviously modify the sizes by changing the width or the height if you wanted the pictures to lay out better in the story. Or you could just use the pictures as like header elements and have the text not interrupted by the pictures like this. Yeah, right. Do as you see fit. But this hopefully gives you everything you need to be able to make progress on this, okay? Are there questions in the 0 minutes that remain? That was a bit of a rush at the end especially, but hopefully this example will be useful. I'll post the code immediately after class. So it'll be on the website, Canvas. I will get the video posted as soon as I can with the times required by both Zoom and YouTube to process the videos. But I would guess that by lunch, it should be up, if that's helpful. So hang in there, deep breath, and hope everybody got some sleep. And I will see everybody Friday online. Thank you all very much. Talk to you later. Ciao. Boom. End the meeting.